Most high-performing men approach their health the same way they approach their first year in business, all over the place. One week they're fasting, next week it's a new training program, then they're buying supplements from an ad they saw on Instagram, and 6 months later, nothing's changed. The problem isn't effort, and it's not discipline either. It's that you keep chasing the next shiny object while ignoring the real levers that are actually sabotaging your progress. And the fundamental problem, if we're being honest, you don't even know what that thing is. You're throwing effort at whatever feels productive, but chances are you've never identified your biggest bottleneck. I'm Jimmy Mackey, founder at Catalyst Transformations, where we've helped over 400 high-performing men transform their bodies and health. And today I'm going to show you the exact framework I use to identify where every guy I work with gets stuck and how to figure out where you specifically need to start if you want to reclaim your body, your drive, and your health. Let's jump in. All right, so when it comes to diagnosing and figuring out where the guys I'm working with are really getting stuck, there's a theory or a philosophy that I've stolen from the world of business, right? And so from my understanding, this theory was developed in the 1980s for manufacturing, theory of constraints. And the big idea behind it is that there's one constraint that determines the output of the entire system. I don't know anything about manufacturing, so I'm going to take this and apply it to small business, which I do have a decent understanding of. And so if we take this theory of constraints and we apply it to a small business, there's kind of like four main functions of a small business, right? There's marketing, sales, fulfillment, and operations. We can define marketing as how many qualified people are finding you, landing on your webpage, finding your social media, coming into your store, etc., right? Sales is how many of those people are you converting into paying clients or customers, right? Simple. Third, fulfillment is, are you actually being able to give those people what they came there to get, right? Fourth is operations. This could be team. This could be a bunch of different things, but how profitable is the business is kind of what we can look at here, right? If we take this and our goal is to build the most profitable business or increase bottom line, then we need to go through and see, okay, what is going to be the main bottleneck? If we're trying to make however much money per month and we only have 2 people finding us a month, probably not going to make that much money, right? There on the flip side though, if you have tons of people finding you and none of those people are turning into paying clients or customers, then sales becomes the bottleneck. Okay. Let's say you have tons of people your marketing team is being able to generate, tons of people your sales team is being able to convert, but you don't have the ability to fulfill on this. You just have to say no to money, essentially. That's your bottleneck. Let's say, you have a shit ton of people you're fulfilling, but your operations are a mess and your expenses are through the roof. And therefore you're not making a lot of money at the bottom line. That's your bottleneck. But how do we apply this to fitness, right? And so the thing is with this philosophy, it's not to, okay, like maybe there's a problem with marketing, sales, fulfillment, and operations. It's not, okay, how do we fix all of them all at the same time? It's what is going to be the biggest thing where if we fix this, we're going to see asymmetrical returns. That's the big idea, right? And so when we apply this to fitness, we need to figure out what is that number one thing. Second, let's address that. Let's fix that bottleneck. Third, let's rinse and repeat. What's the next thing we could focus on if we're not where we want to be yet? If you want to be, just keep the system running, right? Simple as that. So I've built this thing I call the fitness score tracker. And so it breaks down the 3 main components of fitness. We have nutrition, training, and we have recovery. Nutrition, I've broken this down into 4 main habits separated by weight. You can argue with me on weight or the habits all you want. That's fine. It's just for the sake of this video. And frankly, these are what I found to be quite useful and the main habits in my practice. So there's that. So we have calories. So if your goal is to lose weight, right? Calories are going to be a big freaking deal. There's people that will argue that fact. I don't know why, but calories are a big deal. So if you're not losing weight, chances are you're not in a calorie deficit. Probably simple as that. This could probably be way more than 40%, frankly. That's just where I have it here though. Macros. So this is going to be your protein, your carbs, your fats. Are those dialed in or not? So if they're not dialed in, again, that's an issue in and of itself. Food quality. Are you eating whole foods 80% of the time? No, that's an issue, right? Is your meal timing optimized? Or this doesn't need to be like super nuanced. You don't need to get into like peri-workout nutrition, all that kind of shit. But are you eating 3 meals throughout, evenly spaced out throughout the day? Are you breaking up your protein evenly? Are you having most of your carbs around training? Yes or no? Probably not. Right. Okay. And then are you lifting 3 to 4 times a week? And the caveat there is like not just going in the gym, going through the motions. Like, are you on an actual program that's progressively overloaded, that's periodized, that has proper exercise selection for your biomechanics, for your body? Is there proper volume per muscle group per week? So on and so forth. Yes or no? Right. Are you getting 8,000 steps a day? Pretty straightforward. Are you doing 30 minutes of cardio per week? Yes or no? Right. And then sleep, 7 hours of sleep. Is 1.5 of that REM, is 1.5 of that deep. That's kind of a measurement of the quality of your sleep. So you could actually be getting 6 hours, still get good quality. Good for you. Is your stress managed or low, where you want it to be? And then you're getting 30 minutes of sunlight a day, right? And so if we go through these, let me just kind of do a reasonable score of someone who's, putting in effort, but not really losing weight. First thing is they're probably just not in a calorie deficit, right? Let's look there. Chances are their macros aren't really dialed in either. Lifting, maybe they're lifting 3 times a week. Maybe they're probably not getting 8,000 steps a day. And even them lifting 3 times a week, they're probably not on a very good program. Maybe they're getting 7 hours of sleep, but probably stress is through the roof, and maybe they never see the sun. This is a pretty average avatar for somebody that I see that comes to work with me before we start, right? So they're not tracking their food, or they're not tracking their food well. So, maybe they think they're eating 2,000 calories, but really they're eating 3,000. That sounds crazy, but there's so many guys who are eating 1,000 calories of cooking oils per day and like that they're not a calorie deficit even when they think they are. Macros on point. Most guys before, actually joining a program, doing something, have no clue what their macros are. So that's a pretty easy 0. Food quality. I will say that, most guys do try to focus on eating good quality whole foods, especially if they're married and their wife is doing some cooking. That's usually pretty decent. Most guys aren't complete assholes with what they're putting in their body. It's more the portions is what I find. And honestly, probably meal timing is not very optimized. They're typically skipping breakfast, having snacks after dinner, and a little bit all over the place with that. So this would be an average person. They go to the gym 3 days a week, but they're kind of going through the motions. But I'll give you the benefit of the doubt. Let's say we'll give them a 1 here, even though, right? 8,000 steps a day, probably not. Most guys, if they're not intentional with their step count, they're at 4,000, 5,000 maybe. So that's typically a 0. Let's say they're doing 10 minutes of cardio after all 3 of their lifts. Sleep, most guys are below this, but let's give this guy this. Let's see if sleep quality is good, but he's stressed. He's a parent. He's working 70 hours a week. He has nothing in place to manage his stress. It's through the roof, right? And then he never sees the sun. This is a pretty average person, right? So if we go through this and we could say, okay, this guy, he needs to start tracking his food. He needs to get a meal structure in place. He needs to, that would kind of fall into that. He needs to get his steps up. He needs to start meditating or doing whatever this guy wants to do to manage his stress. He needs to get morning sunlight. This is what most guys would do, is they just kind of jump into everything all at once. And then what happens? 30 days later, they're just back to where they started. They fall off with everything. So it's not a very intelligent approach. A better approach would be, okay, what is going to be the lowest hanging fruit for me, where if I fix that, it's going to make the biggest impact. And so you'll see here, I put the weights for each thing, and then I put the category weight. So again, you could argue with me all you want. This is just what I see working very well in my practice and getting great results. So nutrition is going to be the biggest driver, at least when it comes to weight loss. Recovery too, if you're not sleeping like shit, sure, that could sabotage everything, make you insulin resistant, so on and so forth. But nutrition is a better place to start. So this guy, what's going to be the biggest thing for him? Getting his calories in place, right? So just doing that would get his overall fitness score from a 42% up to a 62%. That's a massive. Whereas this guy, decided he wants to go on morning walks to manage his stress and get his 30 minutes of sunlight. That's only going to bring him up 6%. Not saying it's a bad thing to do, but it's like, let's focus on the thing that's going to have the biggest outcome on the overall system, right? And then let's say this guy does decide to focus here. Maybe he tracks protein too. He's just focused on getting calorie deficit and getting to his protein goal. Great. I wouldn't say his macros are on point, but they're moving in the right direction. Maybe give him 0.5 here. Just doing that, tracking his food. There's super efficient ways you can do this. I teach my guys how to do it with this app called Chronometer. Pretty much automate your food logging pretty easily. Do it in less than a few minutes a day. Just doing that gets this guy's fitness score up to 74%. Now that's still a C, but it's still pretty freaking good. That's still losing weight versus him being stalled out completely beforehand. And then from there, he's going to be feeling much better about his progress because he's losing weight. He's seeing difference in the mirror. His energy is going to be feeling better. He's going to feel way more motivated. Now he's going to be like, okay, let's dial in my macros now. Let's get these locked in. Now he's up to a B minus. From there, he's feeling even better. Let's get the meal timing dialed in, right? And then this is how you start layering on habits to really achieve a state of optimal health, optimal body composition. It's not, let's go from 0 to 100 all at once. That's how you burn out and back at square one. No. Focus on the biggest point of leverage. Make that a habit. Lock that in. What's my next biggest point of leverage? That is the most effective way to actually lock in habits that are going to get you to your end goal and make this a lifestyle that you want to stick to and that you actually enjoy sticking to. Why? Because you see the progress from it. You get that dopamine loop of this feels really good. And then it just becomes how you execute in the world. That's what we're after here. Okay. Now, let's say, and this does happen, but not often, most people, when they're saying like, oh, I'm doing all the right things and I'm not seeing the progress I deserve, yada, yada. Most people are fucking up something here. Mostly they're not a calorie deficit. They think they are, they're not. Right? But there are a portion of people who are actually doing all the right things and they're not seeing the rate of progress that they ought to be. Why? Hormones. Okay. So if we come to this tab, hormones and deficiency, which by the way, I'm going to put this in the description down below so you can make your own copy. You can go through it. Something's up with the hormones. Main hormones are going to be that I'll look at in terms of like weight loss, body composition are going to be insulin, thyroid, cortisol. I kind of put inflammation in here. It's not really a hormone per se, but it really fits with this. Typically, if you're stressed out mess, you're drinking a lot of alcohol, you're doing things like that, your inflammation is going to be horrible too. So I just put that in there. Testosterone, obviously, this is the main hormone that most people think about. And then nutrient deficiencies, also not a hormone, but it really impacts all your hormones. So it's good to put in there. And I put these in order of kind of like the biggest culprits, right? So insulin resistance, I have a full video on this that you can watch it. I'll put it up here somewhere. But essentially what happens if you are insulin resistant is you can't tap into fat burning mode. So even if you are really dialed in with, being in a calorie deficit, you're doing all the movement, yada, yada, you'll typically lose weight a little bit, but it's going to be way slower than the average person. Like if the average person was doing what you were doing, they might lose 1.5 pounds per week. But if you're insulin resistant, which by the way, I'd say like 80% of people are, maybe you're losing 0.3 pounds a week. Super frustrating. So this needs to be optimized. I have a full video to watch on how to optimize insulin resistance. But in a nutshell, it comes down to first and foremost, locking all these in. If you're not locking all these in, not good. And then from there, really titrating back on the carbs for a short period of time. It's kind of how you fix insulin resistance, get that working much better. Second would be thyroid. Thyroid you can think about as like your body's thermostat. So when thyroid is clinically, or when it's suboptimal, what's going to happen is your metabolism is just going to be really slow. That's dumbed down. It's a fine way to think about it. So, you could think you're in a calorie deficit, but because your metabolism is slowed down, because your thyroid is so fucked, you're not actually, right? And there's some symptoms you can look out for here. That could be an issue. But again, you should be getting labs to kind of look at this, not just self-diagnosing based on symptoms. And then third, cortisol. When you're stressed, you're wired but tired, you're going to store belly fat way more. It has a very direct relationship with insulin. Something I've learned from Coach Kasim Hansen. There's this thing called the cortisol insulin seesaw, which I'll probably make a full video on, but it's really going to impact your ability to lose weight. If you're a stressed out mess and you have super high inflammation, something you can look at there is your CRP on your blood work would be a really good one. 4-point salivary cortisol, that works too. It's going to be less common, and honestly, it's hit or miss. So I would mostly just look at inflammation and your other markers as a proxy for your cortisol. Testosterone, we're looking at total testosterone, free testosterone, a few other things as well, like sex hormone binding, globulin, luteinizing hormone, follicle stimulating hormone. You don't need to know all of this, but essentially, if your testosterone is low or lower than what you need it to be, not just like low compared to the reference range, which by the way is bullshit, you're going to have poor nutrient partitioning. The foods you eat are going to get stored as fat more easily, more readily than they would be stored as muscle. You're going to have less oomph. You're going to have less motivation to go to the gym. You're going to have increased body fat. It's not going to be a good time. And then nutrient deficiencies, biggest one, I'd say pretty much every guy's blood work I look at, vitamin D is going to be deficient. And when vitamin D is deficient, it's going to have a massive influence on your insulin sensitivity, on thyroid, on cortisol, on testosterone, on literally everything. So that's a really easy thing to fix to make everything else work much better. Other things, magnesium, zinc, are also really big things. Having a high omega-6 to 3 ratio, which is going to be pro-inflammatory. Those are things to look at if you're doing all these things right and nothing's working out for you. So we've covered theory of constraints. We've covered the base habits into how to score yourself, and we've covered hormones and nutrient deficiencies here. So what do you do with this information? So the first thing I do is score yourself and be straight up honest with yourself. Don't just say, yeah, I think I'm in a calorie deficit. Actually log your food for at least a day and be like, oh shit, I'm actually eating this many calories, right? Are you training 3 days a week, but it's not really that good of a program? Just put that as a 0 and just go through all of these and see what your actual score is. From there, find what is going to be the lowest hanging fruit that if I fix this, I'm going to get the biggest outcome in terms of my results. Typically, it's going to be something to do with nutrition, but you could also, as a caveat here, just be like, yeah, nutrition is going to be the biggest thing, but honestly, I'm not that motivated to do this, but I really want to start lifting weights. Start there. Because then what's going to happen, that's going to become a cornerstone habit for you. And then you're going to be lifting weights, putting in all that effort, and you're not seeing results. You're going to get frustrated. That frustration is going to be motivation to fix your nutrition. So even if maybe, hey, it's not the biggest thing, it's just what you want to focus on, that's valid too. That's totally fine. And then the third thing is, once that constraint is fixed, fix the next one, right? And the more you do it this way, you fix one thing at a time, the more sustainable of a process this is going to be, the more enjoyable it's going to be, the more likely this is to become a lifestyle, and the more you're going to be able to lock this in, right? And then finally, if you have everything locked in here, you followed everything, everything's good, and you're not seeing the results, run a hormone panel. See what's going on there, see what needs to be fixed so they can actually start seeing results. Even if you are seeing great results, frankly, I'd recommend just doing this twice a year, especially if you're over 40, just for health optimization reasons. Even if everything feels fine, there can be things going on under the hood that you really want to fix and get ahead of, in my opinion, right? All right. Well, if you found this valuable, consider subscribing. I'm going to be posting more like this. Like, comment, really helps me out selfishly, but also it's going to tell me what to make more content around. And that'll help me focus on what to make those next videos about. So hope you found this valuable. See you in the next one. Cheers.